Keep the air clean.
The stress of this whole thing is weighing on everyone around the world. And some of the biggest questions that we've been getting is, what can you do and what should you do as a small business, as an entrepreneur, as an employer that actually has a team? Hey there, my loves. Welcome back to my channel and CPTV, the place where aspiring and current entrepreneurs can get the tips, the tools, the strategies, and the blueprints to systematize their businesses, grow their passions into businesses, and grow their businesses into freedom. If that sounds good to you, then this is the place you're going to want to be. You're going to want to subscribe and like and share and stick around, because I give you every Tuesday and every Friday all my how-tos and step-by-steps to get to that next level in your entrepreneurial journey. I am CP, or Cheryl Perez, and I am so excited to be here with you today, even though we are talking about something that isn't necessarily the most pleasant to discuss. It is about the coronavirus, or COVID-19, and what all of that means as it relates to you being an employer, a small business owner, and actually having a team. The stress of this whole thing is weighing on everyone around the world. And some of the biggest questions that we've been getting is, what can you do and what should you do as a small business, as an entrepreneur, as an employer that actually has a team? Now, there's so much information out there floating around. Some good.
Hand washing really is important in trying to interrupt the transmission of coronavirus.
And some bad.
As the disease spreads, if it spreads.
It's not so much a question of if this will happen anymore.
We're rapidly developing a vaccine.
We can't rely on a vaccine.
This will end. This will end.
This coronavirus will go well beyond this season into next season.
We have it so well under control.
It's likely that this virus will cause a pandemic.
So today, I am going to share with you some detailed insights and tips on creating your perfect HR plan and what you should, can, and ought to do as an employer with a team. So I'm putting on my HR expert hat, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the information. And in true CP fashion, I am actually going to give you a freebie. And this freebie is Coronavirus, Your HR Plan. It's a detailed guide to all of the stuff that I'm going to be talking to you about today, as well as a sample infectious diseases policy that you can use to implement in your business with your team immediately. So let's get to work. Tip number 1, keep it legal and compliant. Most countries have some type of law in place that's designed to protect employees in the workplace. In the US, we've got OSHA, which is all around safety and workplace. And in most states, we've also got workers' compensation. So those things will definitely apply in this scenario and in this situation. You also want to keep in mind that as an employer, you have a duty of care obligation to your employees. And that just generally means legally, it's your responsibility to keep them safe. If you aren't doing a good job or applying enough to actually keeping your employees safe, then you could be opening yourself up to all kinds of liability. So it's very important that as we begin to implement your policies, changes in different things, and some of the stuff that we're going to continue to talk about today, that you keep in mind all of those safety factors. You keep it legal, you keep it compliant, but most importantly, you keep your employees safe from harm. And that's why some of the stuff that we're getting ready to continue to go over is going to be so important to implementing this HR plan. Now, when I talk about a duty of care, you also want to make sure that you are avoiding a risk of discrimination claims, because that is very important. You do not want to restrict employees from coming into work simply because of their national origin or their race or their culture. And because the actual coronavirus kind of started in different parts of the world, people have tended to do those things. So you can't, for instance, say to someone because they're of Asian descent, they can't come to work because the coronavirus originated in Wuhan, China, right? So be careful of discrimination.
What the hell was that, you little freckle-faced cartoon?
But in the event that you've got employees that are showing symptoms or signs or even calling off sick from a flu-like scenario, then you have the obligation as an employer to restrict them from coming back into your place of employment. Now, you can restrict them in various ways. You can tell them that you need a physician's statement telling you that it's okay for them to come back to work and that they are not contagious. If you currently, in our current state of affair, where most of our states are actually declaring states of emergency, if you have an employee that goes to the doctors with flu-like symptoms, more than likely that doctor is going to encourage them to actually go into quarantine themselves. So if an employee's been out sick and they've got flu-like symptoms and they tell you, I'm feeling better, I want to come back to work, your duty of care and responsibility is to the other employees, and you have to stop them without evidence that it's going to be safe for the rest of your staff. But do not, and I repeat, do not restrict your employees from coming to work simply because of their national origin, simply because of their race, their culture, their religion, any of those things, because that will open you up to discrimination, and that's evidence of not keeping it legal. So keeping it legal and compliant, like I've said, is the first key point and one of the most important points of the HR plan that you're going to put in place to deal with this pandemic. Tip number 2. Communicate effectively and transparently. Effective communication is going to be the key in this scenario. HR departments should pull together, or you as an employer should really pull together as much information as you can to educate your employees on the facts of what's going on with this coronavirus. You want to make sure you're giving them tips and tools in order for them to practice proper hygiene, in order for them to sanitize their workstations, in order for them to really understand what you're requiring of them and what you recommend in order to keep your office environment a safe environment. But you want to be the one to provide them with those facts. So it's great to put together kind of a Corona facts guide. There's tons of information out there on the internet, obviously, but I've already also mentioned that freebie that I'm going to give you that's going to be chock full of that information. So please make sure that you download that in the link below, or you actually go to www.bighrhero.com/Corona plan and access that freebie, because that freebie is going to be a great guide for you. And like I mentioned, it also includes an actual real true sample infectious diseases policy that if you don't have one, or if you've got an outdated one, or if you've never even heard of one, you're going to want to implement in your organization immediately. Another key aspect of providing effective communication is to give your employees updates on what their healthcare benefits entail. Also, if you have any additional policies or exceptions or allowances that you are going to put in place because of what we're currently facing. It's really important to communicate those. Don't assume that your employees are going to pull out their employee manual and read it, because 9 times out of 10 they won't. Don't assume that your employees have memorized their healthcare plan. Just be very proactive and very effective and very transparent in those communication techniques, and ultimately give them the resources and the tools that they need in advance to kind of calm the storm, and to show them, look, we are on this, we are credible, we care about you, and we're taking good care of you. So here's all the information that you're going to need. Should you feel some symptoms, how you're going to access your plan, remind them where they can get their benefit cards from, they can go on and download them online, whatever it is. Open up the lines of communication and review everything once again, thoroughly. Now, tip number 3, you might think is a given, but it's not. You want to provide on-site supplies. And when I say on-site supplies, I'm not talking about pens and pencils and paper. That's obvious, right? But you want to make sure that your office has hand sanitizer readily available, even if it's at your front desk, if you've got a brick and mortar office, if you've even got virtual employees and you've got, on-site employees, you want to make sure that you're giving them the supplies and the equipment that they need in order to keep themselves safe, in order to practice hygiene. Make sure that you've got disinfectant sprays, that you've got Lysol available for them to be able to spray down their workstation. Maybe even institute kind of a reminder system where every couple of hours you kind of go around or chime in on your phone intercom system and say, hey, everybody, take a 10-minute break, sanitize your station, sanitization, wipe everything down, really put together kind of an office cleanliness plan, but make sure you're providing them with hand soap if you've got access to a sink, your hand sanitizers, your Lysols, your surface cleaners. Give them everything that they need. And it really wouldn't hurt to make sure that you've got your first aid kit that you should have in your office available, up to date, filled, and ready in the event that anything really does go down. I've gotten some questions from employers asking, should I get masks for all of my employees? Well, as you know, the CDC has come out and said, please avoid just going out and just, buying tons of masks. They really do want to keep those available for healthcare professionals as this pandemic continues to evolve. So you don't have to do that. But if you have an employee that's showing coughing or sneezing, it's going to make everybody very, very uncomfortable. So I might ask that employee, hey, is this an allergy thing? How are you feeling? Have you been to the doctors? Recommend that they actually go. Or even in some cases, have a thermometer on site where you can do a quick temperature check, sort of like the screen that they're doing when people are traveling. Because if that person is showing an inflated temperature and they're having those signs and symptoms, then that brings me back to that duty of care tip that we talked about. And you might make the recommendation for them to stay at home for at least the next 24 to 48 hours until they're able to actually seek medical care, because it really is going to create anxiety and stress the rest of your staff out. So do whatever you can to update that first aid kit and provide the on-site supplies that your employees need to be, safe, clean, and feel good about where they're at and the fact that they're going to actually be at work with other people. Tip number 4, implement flexible work arrangements, plans, and reevaluate your leave policies. Now, I get this question and have been getting it so much over the last couple of weeks from clients, from friends. Are you required legally to provide your employees with sick leave, with paid time off, with leave options? And the answer is yes and no. It really depends upon your size as an employer. In the United States, specifically, we've got family medical leave, which means if you're over 51 employees, and there's a bunch of different specifics, but you are obligated to provide family medical leave for employees if they are having some type of personal illness or sickness or disability, or an actuality to care for an immediate family member. Now, that is not required that you pay them during that leave. But in this situation, and all of the assumed economic effects that this pandemic is really having on our society, a lot of employers are taking the stance that if you have to miss work to care for a family member, or if you have to miss work because you yourself aren't feeling well, even though we've got FMLA policies in place, even though we don't have to pay you, we're going to do everything that we can in good faith to continue your salary, to continue your hourly wage for whatever your hours would have been. So yes, in some instances, legally, you do have to provide it. But if you are smaller than that as an employer, which most of you in this audience and watching this channel are, you aren't obligated legally to provide that. You may have PTO policies in place. I would say reevaluate that option. Really take a look at it. If you at all can, provide your employees with the opportunity to work from home, to limit their exposure to other employees. Even if you're working with people every single day, you don't know who those people are coming in contact with in the evenings when they leave work, or who their family or children are coming in contact with. And it's very, very difficult to figure out exposure, even if you're sitting next to someone every single day and sharing a cubicle or an office. So really consider flexible work arrangements. And I've been getting a lot of pushback from clients potentially on that, which I'll talk about here shortly. But flexible work arrangements like working from home, flexible work leave policies like, for instance, in our state yesterday, our governor declared a state of emergency, and all of our schools in the entire state are going to be closed for a minimum right now of 3 weeks. So that means that all of our children are going to be home. I have employees that have small children. They're going to have to be home. Now, obviously, being home, not having, they don't have 3 weeks worth of PTO or sick time to be able to take. So I have to figure out some flexible work arrangements and kind of allow for what they're going to be going through, because they're going to have to find some way to care for their children. So that's an example. You also need to make sure that you consider expanding your benefits. Maybe your part-time employees right now are not eligible for any paid time off. You know, they're hourly, they're part-time, so if they miss work, they just don't get paid. This is the time to consider whether or not you want to switch that up and actually say, hey guys, if something goes down and everybody has to work from home or nobody can come into work or whatever the case may be, even if you're part-time, if you work 20 hours a week, I'm still going to pay you for 20 hours a week. So this is an opportunity for you kind of to reevaluate all of those things. Also consider allowing for reduced travel or eliminating non-essential travel altogether. Tons of companies and corporations across the world are actually instituting this, especially for like their sales teams or for leadership or for C-level execs, or even for yourself and for any staff members. If travel is involved in your job on a regular basis, as an employer, you might want to say, we're going to eliminate that. There are so many ways that you can communicate with people in far distances nowadays that you don't physically have to put your employees at risk and force them to get on an airplane and travel somewhere, and then ultimately put themselves at risk. Now, the feedback that I've been getting from folks is, I don't know if I can allow my employees to work from home because I'm not 100% confident that they're going to be productive at home. And here's my CP impact tip on what you can do when you have a work from home change, or when you have some concerns about whether or not your employees are going to take advantage of that situation and be productive. One of those things is to institute additional accountability measures in order to ensure that your employees are being productive and that you're actually getting what you need to while everyone is staying safe. And when I say additional accountability measures, I mean things like maybe you institute daily teleconferences where you and your employees who are from home jump on at the end of every day and run through the list of things to do that everybody was supposed to get done that day. You will have a good idea and a good sense of whether or not someone was really productive in an 8-hour day if at the end of that day they weren't able to get anything done. Also, you can institute all kinds of technological tools and project management tools like Asana is a great one, or Monday.com or Trello. And those are ones that will help you keep track of specific tasks and duties, assigning it out, and keeping track of where people are and actually completing those things. So you can overcome that concern by being a little bit more strict on the accountability measures and really inspecting what you expect. Don't let the lack of really ideas surrounding instituting additional accountability prevent you from giving your employees the opportunity to keep themselves and you and their families safe with this entire epidemic going around. And tip number 5, do everything that you can to alleviate the stress and maintain a good company culture. If you are stressed as an employer and as a business owner, your employees are stressed too. I'm stressed. I'm really stressed. And the most important thing is this too shall pass. It really shall. And when it does pass, you want to be able to come back to work and begin to pick up in your business where you left off. And you don't want to have a broken organizational culture because you decided to do things during this entire opportunity to step up and lead. You decided to do things that were not very leader-like. So it's really important, whatever the situation, panic is not going to make it any better. Being strict, being upset, being resentful, all of those things are not going to make the situation any better. So staying calm is essential. You're leading the information brigade as far as your HR plan is concerned when it comes to your employees, and never let them see you sweat. I mean, that's really what it is, right? About being the leader of your team and of your organization. No matter what you're feeling, you got to put on a smile, walk in there and look like you aren't even touched by the matter and that you've got it under control. That's why I wanted to make sure we had this episode of CPTV, because as a small business owner and as an entrepreneur, and even my coaching clients right now, they're reaching out, they're calling my consulting clients. They're like, I'm freaking out. I don't want this to disrupt my business. I think I'm going to lose money. I don't know what to do. That's why I wanted to do this, to give you a game plan. These 5 tips, if you wrote them down and you actually begin to implement them, and don't forget that you download that guide and that sample policy that I am giving you for free, it will take that stressor off of your plate. It will ensure that you've got what you need to move forward as the leader in your organization, and you will ultimately be able to move forward, get through this with the rest of the world, and get back to business as usual. So, one thing that I want to make sure you guys are aware of is I am here as an HR expert, as a small business coach, and really as an advisor. And I know that it's a tumultuous time, and I know not all of you out there are my clients, but that's okay. I want you to know that if you've got any questions at all that are looming in your mind and you've got a team, or even if you're an employee still somewhere else and you want to know, comment below. Put that question in there, and I promise you I will do everything that I can to answer as quickly as possible. But don't forget, you can always go to www.bighrhero.com/Corona plan and download that freebie. It is going to take this off of your plate so you can take off that HR hat and you can move forward with being the leader that you need to be today. Because I don't know about you, but knowing that my employees are safe is also going to keep me and my family safe, and also let me know that in a few weeks or a few months, when this whole thing kind of blows over, that we'll be prepared to move forward as the leaders that we need to be for our teams and for our staff today. So with that being said, my love, I am going to sign out. I wanted to make sure that I was able to give you guys and equip you with some of the great information and ultimately what I do recommend from an HR perspective for you and your teams. Remember to subscribe to this channel, to like, to share this as much as possible, because I think that the word needs to get out. Some of the biggest questions that are out there for employers, for small business owners, for leaders of teams is, what am I supposed to do? What am I obligated to do by the law? What should I be doing as an employer? And that's why I wanted to make sure that you had this information. So until next time, my love, have a wonderful, wonderful week. Wash your hands, use your hand sanitizer, Lysol down everything, and I'll talk to you soon. Mwah. Bye-bye.